How can we benefit from applying semiotic sign action? Buying a gym membership does not guarantee you a toned body and a six-pack or a beach body. Actual exercise and application will get you towards your fitness goals. Interpretation is cerebral muscle memory. Interpretation is culturally situated and requires a lived experience. If you do not know what your audience knows, how will you finally semiotically encode meaning? Discuss. Over the last 3 weeks, we have been exploring the effect of a semiotic sign on its interpretation. Peirce describes 3 states of effect that progressively leads the target audience from no perception to perception of possible meaning through forming an interpretation. This week, we end this discussion on the interpretation. Peirce calls these 3 states that have an effect on interpretation the immediate interpretant, the dynamic interpretant, and the final interpretant. The interpretant being Peirce's word for the effect of the semiotic sign on interpretation. For Semiosis 101 newbies out there, remember not to get intimidated by Peircean terminology. I did say Peirce's language was obtuse. Semiosis 101 is here to put Peirce into designer-centric terminology for you. Just keep your focus on the titles immediate, dynamic, and final with the word effect instead of interpretant. Semiosis or sign action is predicated on an interrelationship of 3 things working to form meaning. Peirce calls this a determination flow between his words, an object, its representative, and its interpretant. Yeah, I know. As soon as those words are introduced, you hear them, but they are intelligible to any normal creative. You're switched off, hopefully only metaphorically. So let us on Semiosis 101 translate those terms into terms designers and illustrators will understand and appreciate more. Let us say the semiotic determination flow is between a concept, its representation, and its interpretation. Therefore, we can, in Semiosis 101 terms, describe the 3 interpretation states as an immediate effect, a dynamic effect, and final effect of a semiotic sign on its interpretation. So far, we have been using a panda drawing to illustrate this. Last week, we had arrived at the dynamic effect state, where the interpreter can, I insert a caveat here, put the name panda to the pattern of black shapes and lines that are meaning-bearing. This pattern we have interpreted so far coalesces into the overall shape of a possible animal, immediate effect. And this animal is likely to be a mammal, fairly large and bear-shaped, dynamic effect. The black and white pattern makes the interpreter say, panda. Now, as I said last week, you probably are not aware of this interpretation flow as it takes milliseconds of subconscious processing for most of you. Why did I caveat this interpretation just now? The interpretation of panda is dependent on the interpreter's socio-cultural lived experience. What? To interpret panda from the drawing, they needed to know about pandas. If someone had never seen a panda, whether at the zoo, in the wild, on TV, in a photograph, or as a child with a cuddly panda toy, yes, I love my panda bear as a child, how could they interpret the drawing as a panda? To the majority, the drawing is clearly a panda. But without that knowledge of pandas, the interpreter may only interpret the drawing as a bear. If they have no socio-cultural knowledge of bears, then the closest their interpretation may get is a mammal or an animal. It is the same drawing, but the effect of the visual language it uses has an effect on how it is understood by a target audience. The creator controls how it is mediated. The audience decides what they interpret from the mediation. The drawing is a mediation between the concept to be communicated, a panda, and how the creative decides to represent that concept of a panda through the visual language they choose. The panda drawing is constructed with black shapes and lines and utilises the white negative spaces to suggest the shape of a bear. These black marks are semiotic iconic representations to resemble body parts. Once the audience interprets these random shapes as something, immediate effect, then the same iconic elements help point the interpreter to name what they see. The semiotic signs now indexically represent themselves as a panda to the interpreter. Dynamic effect. Yes, I did say signs, plural. The drawing is both a semiotic sign as a bear and compromises of multiple nested semiotic signs suggesting individual panda body parts. But that is a drawing, not a sign, I hear some of you shout at me. If you still think we are talking about signage, stop watching this episode and go back and watch the first episode of season 2. The construction of meaning is the final effect of a semiotic sign on its interpretation. Peirce says this is when the semiotic sign's effect on the interpretation tends to represent itself to be related to its concept. We see this final effect at work in our drawing example. How many of you saw the panda instantaneously? All the visual elements in the drawing quickly progressed you to a panda interpretation. Once you saw panda, the meaning-bearing elements in the drawing had semiotically performed the sign action effect from immediate possibility through dynamic mediation to final intended interpretation. If the determination flow has been successful, the representation encoded semiotic signs of a concept, panda, is clear enough to lead the audience to make the intended interpretation of panda, the concept. Any illustrator or designer can mindfully hone their mark-making visual communication skills to help the interpreter, their intended target audience, to gain the intended meaning. For designers and illustrators, the big Damascene moment when trying to apply semiotic theory is the realization that a semiotic sign is just encoded meaning. It's not a tangible utilitarian thing you make like a toilet door sign. Semiosis, semiotic sign action, is a process you creatives can learn to apply to your existing creative processes to enhance how you succeed in visually communicating your intended concepts. Semiosis is something you encode into what you create, ensuring that it is meaning-bearing. Peirce describes the final effect of a semiotic sign on its interpretation as the one interpretive result to which every interpreter is destined to come if the sign is sufficiently considered. In our panda example, the intended concept is panda. All the visual language used and the aesthetic decisions taken to form the iconic shapes into things that identify a panda to the intended audience is a skill. Peirce describes this highest final effect state as a sign of law. He classes the level the immediate effect performs at as a level of possibilities. Peirce calls this a ream. Next, he classes the dynamic effect as performing at a level of mediated proposals. Peirce calls this a dicent. The final effect happens at the phenomenological level of thirdness, and Peirce classes it as an argument. What Peirce means in creative terms by calling this level of the final effect an argument is that a creative carefully selects visual language to avoid misinterpretation. Or, to put it another way, creatives semiotically encode for successful interpretation by the intended target audience. I will leave you on another animal depiction. Is this 12th century Tarprom temple carving in Cambodia a Stegosaurus? I will wait. It looks like it is. The carver has carved a pentagonal spinal plate to what we know as a Stegosaurus. But how did the carver know what a Stegosaurus looked like? To our 21st century eyes, the shape we see in relief certainly suggests to us as a final effect a Stegosaurus, but it is a badly visualized water buffalo or Asian rhino surrounded by leaf motifs. The Danish semiotician Thorkild Thelfsen states culture determines how we interpret, and our target audience will have ways of interpreting. These are based on their own cognition, understanding, knowledge, and cultural references. To ensure you reduce your capacity to miscommunicate the intended concept, you can become more mindful of how your designs and illustrations are crafted. As we have seen over the last 3 weeks, semiotic interpretation happens at 3 states: immediate, then dynamic, onto final. Each state is the effect of the visual language on how it is interpreted. By semiotically controlling the aesthetic decisions from the iconic mark-making level up to the finished piece of visual communication, misinterpretation and miscommunication can be minimalized. Subscribe to Semiosis 101, come back next week for more on encoding semiotic signs into your designs and illustrations. Thanks for watching. Check out the other Semiosis 101 episodes, like and share them with your friends, and hit the bell and subscribe buttons to be notified when next week's free Semiosis 101 episode is published. You can also follow Semiosis 101 on the socials for updates. It is at Semiosis 101 on Instagram and Threads. See you all again next week for more Semiosis 101 to help illustrators and designers to enhance your visual communication skills.